Hello Year 4, in today's lesson you're going to write your letter of complaint, and we're going to do this over 2 lessons so you can take your time, particularly with structuring the letter, thinking about where the address goes. So the layout's absolutely vital. So let's just remind ourselves about the layout of Maradov's letter, and I would suggest if you get stuck at any point in time, just pause it, go back, have a look at the layout and your deconstruction and use that to help you set it out. So thinking about the features we need to include, we need to make sure we've got our sender's address here in the right-hand corner, our recipient's address over on the left, the date, who it's to, and we've got to make sure we show really clearly that we've got paragraphs by missing a line. So we've got our opening paragraph here, which summarises why we're writing. Then we miss a line. We've got our next paragraph, which goes into much more detail about what the problem is. And then we miss a line. Then we've got our next paragraph, which summarises what we expect to happen. Miss a line, and our final sentence, which summarises again what we expect to happen. Miss a line, and then the sign off, yours sincerely. So the structure and the layout of the letter is going to be a really big focus. Now, before you start writing, I want you to remind yourself of what you put on your success criteria. So what did you say you needed to include? What were your personal targets? Those are things you've got to really work on. You may have decided emotive language was going to go on your success triangle. So think about the emotive language. You might not have put it in your plans. You're going to need to include it in your writing today. Maybe you said you were going to use brackets or dashes, and they might not have been in your plans. So you need to ensure that you then include it in your writing. I'd like you to spend a bit of time just going back through your plan, rereading what you've written, because remember, you're going to be expanding on your plan, so turning those bullet points into full sentences. Okay, so here's the first part of our plan, and I'd say this is the part that's going to take you the longest amount of time. So I would expect today that you're going to be able to set up the address of the sender and the recipient and your opening paragraph, and perhaps just start paragraph 2 today. Really take time on making sure you've got the layout of the letter correct. You may want to even just practice. So on a piece of in your book, actually just practice where you're going to write the different addresses, and then turn over the page and do your proper draft on the next page if you need to. So here we've got on the top right hand corner then the person's address, the address of the person who's writing it. Wolf the Warrior Viking, Meathead Cottage, Hideous Hill, Burke, and as you can see they're all lined up. I miss a line. Now sometimes you have the date next, sometimes you have the address of the recipient next. It doesn't particularly matter. Let's stick with what we've got here. We've got the date, then we've got the address of the recipient, Professor Yobbish, Big Axe Books, Burke. Don't forget your capital letters. So look, you can see we've missed a line and we've missed a line. Between each one we miss a line. We miss a line, we go over, and we've now got Dear Professor Yobbish. So take your time to set this out in your book before you move on to the actual writing. And if I go back and look at my plan, I'm writing to you to complain about your book, recently bought, utterly useless, quite misleading. So all I need to do is just turn that into a full sentence now. I'm writing to complain about your utterly useless and abysmal book. I've decided to put some more high quality vocabulary in there. How to Train Your Dragon, which I have just had the misfortune of recently purchasing. In my opinion, it is the worst information book that has ever been written. Without a doubt, it is incredibly misleading to describe it as a definitive textbook. Now, as you can see, if I go back to my plan, I've taken my key points and I've added some bits into it. I've added in some emotive language and I've added in my personal opinion. But I've done what I said in my plan. I've explained why I'm writing. Right, the next bit in my plan was giving reasons for why I was complaining. I purchased the book and I hope I could train my dragon. I've got the cost. I'm going to think about putting that in brackets. I was disappointed to find there's only one bit of information. Can assure you it doesn't work, wondering whether you actually spent time with dragons. I'm going to keep looking back at my plan to remind myself as I write. So I miss a line and I'm now ready to start my next paragraph. I was extremely excited, so I've decided to add that in there, some emotive language, to purchase your book, and felt confident that it would be all I would need to help me train my unruly dragon. Imagine my disappointment, however, when on reading your book, I discovered that it in fact contained only one extremely brief chapter. I can assure you that the sole instruction, and here I've got parenthetic dashes, some extra information, to yell at the dragon does not work. I was horrified, a bit more emotive language, to find that other than this piece of useless information, the book contained no further advice. I'm beginning to wonder whether you actually came into contact with any dragons whilst you were writing the book, because it certainly doesn't appear to be so. This book was expensive for me to purchase, and again, I've got my brackets. It cost me a month's wages of 1 chicken and 20 oysters, and I do not believe that it was worth the cost. So what I've done is I've taken my points, and actually I changed the order around. I decided to put my costs later on, and that's absolutely fine. But I've taken each of those bullet points and I've used it and expanded on it. Here's my next paragraph describing what I want to happen. I expect a refund, believe your book should be withdrawn, stick to writing about butterflies. So I've got 3 key bullet points. I missed a line in the last paragraph. Due to the fact that your book is misleading and clearly doesn't do what it falsely claims, I believe that all copies should be withdrawn from bookshops and libraries immediately. At the very least, I expect a full refund and compensation for the time I've wasted in purchasing and reading this book. So we've got a bit of technical vocabulary there. I would also suggest that you stick to writing about butterflies in future. So I've taken my notes and I've added in some of those talk scaffolds. I believe, I expect, due to the fact. And finally, we're ready for our last paragraph, our sign off. I had my points. I'd appreciate your immediate attention, and yours sincerely. I miss a line. I would appreciate your immediate attention to the matter. I expect a full refund and a prompt response to my letter, explaining how you're going to resolve the problem. Yours sincerely, Wolf the Viking Warrior. Once you've finished writing your letter, go back and have a think about your success criteria. Now, I do want you to ensure bronze, you're using high quality vocabulary and emotive language. Silver, make sure you've got those talk scaffolds, in my opinion, I strongly believe. And gold, you're really aiming to use brackets and a dash for extra information. When you've written your letter, go back through it, have a look at your success criteria, tick off the features you've used, and make sure if you've missed any out, you need to go back in and add them in. And then you've got 2 reflections to complete. What have you done well? What are you most pleased with? And is there anything you need to improve on? Now, this reflection is important because when you come to do your editing, if you've realised there's something in the success triangle that you haven't included, for example, brackets, that's something you need to act on when you come to do your editing. So if you're in your next step, you've said, oh, next step, I need to add in brackets, that's your target for when you come to edit it in the next lesson.